Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Loehr.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because we have somebody on the show today that for me, brings together several different worlds that I have some passions for. One being in the area of sports and sports excellence, as well as leadership excellence, all to impact the customer experience. Dr. Jim Loehr grew up in a suburb of Denver, Colorado called Wheat Ridge. He has a younger brother and an older sister. Jim's brother studied to be a Jesuit priest right out of high school, and his sister became a nun. His brother left the Jesuit order after 7 years, and his sister remains a nun today. Jim has 3 sons, all of whom have their own businesses, and he has 7 grandchildren, all of whom are boys, with the exception of 1 girl. Jim played multiple sports, baseball for 9 years, basketball through college, and tennis his entire lifetime. One of his sons played professional tennis for several years. After receiving his doctorate in psychology and becoming a licensed psychologist in the state of Colorado, Jim became chief psychologist and executive director of a large community mental health center that served the central and southern parts of Colorado. Even in grad school, Jim was interested in the application of psychology to human performance, particularly to elite performers in sport. Eventually, Jim decided to pursue his dream, left the clinical world, much to the shock of his colleagues, and opened a private practice in Denver, specializing in sports psychology. He went on to set up a research institute at the Nick Moliteri Tennis Academy, where he collected data on performance for 6 years. In 1992, Jim started a business with his longtime friend, Dr. Jack Groppel, who possessed a doctorate in bioengineering. Together, they formed a company called the Human Performance Institute, which became a living lab of high performance. To date, nearly 400,000 clients have gone through programs offered by the Institute. Clients include 17 number ones in the world in their sport, military forces, FBI anti-terrorist teams, physicians and surgeons from nearly every specialty, and business executives from throughout the world. And Johnson & Johnson purchased the Institute in 2008, and Jim remained with the company for another 6 years. Jim has authored 17 books and is a New York Times bestselling author. According to Jim, his 2 most important accomplishments were his breakthroughs in energy management and his pioneering work in linking character strengths to sustained high performance. Jim is currently applying his insights to youth development. The new company is called the Youth Performance Institute. Jim currently lives in Golden, Colorado, a suburb of Denver, and all 3 of his sons and his grandchildren reside just minutes from where he lives. Dr. Jim Loehr, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am ready. Thank you for having me, Jim. I hope we can create some value here.
I've been doing that all your life, so I know we're going to be able to do that here for the Fast Leader Legion. But before we get into some real meaty discussions and dialogue, if you could share with us how what you're going to help us with today is going to impact the customer experience.
Well, it's been a really interesting journey for me. I mean, we started the Human Performance Institute, and how I got to character was, there was nothing in my training as a psychologist that brought me to that point. It was all this data. I'm a data guy. I love big data sets and data trends. And we had this living laboratory. And the more data we got over year after year after year, we began to see that in every high performance arena, something kept surfacing. And that was the connection people had to other people, the way they treated other people. And when you talk about the customer experience, I think that's probably base camp. That's ground zero for the way in which you treat others. They never forget it. And so we began to realize that one of our biggest insights was that health ignites performance, and health is physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And we actually came to understand spiritual is character health, your deepest values and beliefs. And the highest level of health was really represented in your treatment of other people: integrity, honesty, kindness, compassion, humility, gratefulness, and so forth. Those are the gold stars that represent the most important connection that we have to the world. We are social creatures. And so that, I think, is really the core of what customer service is. We all want to be treated with respect, with dignity, and have people speak truth to us. And that is not easy, but that was what our data led us to. And that's why the last 10 years of my professional career have been devoted to that character space.
Well, and as you're saying that, I start thinking, for me, being in this realm of customer experience and customer service for so many years, I start thinking about the additional layers of the complexity of what you talked about. I understand the base camp thing, but then some people talk about, oh, it's more than just the golden rule, which is, treating others similar to how you'd want to be treated. It's more of a platinum rule. It's like, how do they want to be treated? And then therefore, even as a leader, I need to do some adaptations in order to be able to serve them at that higher and or deeper level, depending on how you look at it.
So we found we worked with some of the most extraordinary leaders, and we tracked leaders for long periods of time. And we began to realize that we tend to follow people we can trust. We tend to follow people that represent integrity. We tend to follow people that speak the truth, that have a compassion and caring and empathy for others. Even though they have to make hard and tough decisions, there's something about them that people know that they've actually really, really weighed this carefully, and it really probably pains them dearly to have to furlough this number of people or have to make these tough decisions. And so sustained high performance was critically connected to the way in which you interact with others and hold this sacred ground of moral and ethical character.
Okay, so for me, talking about analytics, being analytical and analytically minded, I start thinking about the formula of all of this that ultimately should, equate to success. And I start thinking about something that you said in the book, where you say that the morality system shared by most all leaders is deeply flawed. First of all, how so is it deeply flawed?
Well, the more we look at this, what I call the moral machinery, it's actually quite amazing that we actually end up making as many good decisions morally and ethically as we do. The system has so many what I call coding errors. There's so many flaws and really unfortunate hiccups in the system. If you ask people, where did you get your moral and ethical, kind of source code? Where did it come from? Most will say parents. And parents are often deeply flawed themselves. They have things that actually are quite embarrassing for anyone to even talk about, because they're so misaligned with what you might call this ethical and moral line that you'd like to maintain for yourself. Your parents didn't have it in all cases. Also, we often get what we believe to be the truth and how we hold ourselves accountable to something from religion. Religion oftentimes gets it completely crazy. In some cases, there are things that just don't really represent the intentional harming of others because people don't believe what you believe in, or on and on and on. I could go into that in some detail, but we all benefit from religion. We all benefit from our parents, but there are things that we've carried into our own personal morality that cause our morality to get easily hijacked. So we know strong emotion, we know vengeance, we know anger, we know frustration, we know survival needs. All of these things, powerful emotion can completely short circuit our judgment of what's right and what's wrong. You can look in politics and you see the power of political persuasion. Our ideology can overwhelm what we think is right and wrong. In fact, we take the party line even though we know that's not what we truly believe. But we have to follow the party politics. We know we're born and raised in a culture. Maybe you had a culture of gangs, and you had a certain amount of morality. Now you carry that with you. And so when we looked at how flawed the system is, if we don't do a lot of heavy lifting and become critically aware of how easy it is for this system to get hijacked, and that's why the whole book is, how do we repair it? We didn't really own this. We just somehow got it. And now we have to look at it, and we have to go to work and make sure that it is robust enough to take us home morally and ethically, because if we don't, we're probably going to get, along the way, some serious unfortunate consequences will come our way.
And we're going to definitely, and we'll talk about this, we'll put a link to the book in the show notes page, Leading with Character. And again, Jim has several books, but this one, I mean, for me, also comes with a companion. And we'll talk about what that is in a second as well. But when I start, going back to this whole hijacking the system and being somebody who is wanting to lead with character, have higher moral value, but yet we're talking about success, I start thinking that those people, I mean, I would like to consider myself one as attempting to do so, lead with character, is oftentimes put in a position where you can't succeed because we can't do it alone. I mean, we can't have success in isolation. It just does not happen. So when we start talking about, finding employees, finding team members, when we start talking about collaborating with colleagues and, other organizations and things like that, if we're dealing with a corrupt system, how in the heck can we find success?
Well, boy, Jim, you've raised a really, really big and important question. So many of the systems that we are coming into have serious flaws in them, and we carry our flaws into that system. And so often we're swept into that culture, and the culture may be highly corrupt in various ways. A sales culture, or a culture where, when we really step back and look at what the underlying kind of principles are that represent the company, we really get uneasy. We're really beginning to feel like there's something isn't quite gelling with my sense of but I got to make a living. I got to succeed here. And we spend a lot of time. I wrote a whole book, The Only Way to Win. It was the book I wrote previously to this one. And the only way to win is to win with character. And the only way to lose is to lose with character. We learned something very important in the laboratory, was that there is a hidden scorecard inside all of us. And most of us are not aware of it. And that hidden scorecard is how we're really representing the value of who we are to ourselves. And that scorecard, there is a society scorecard, how much fame, glory, money, how successful you are extrinsically, how many cars, house, suburbs, everything. And I've worked with all these number ones in the world. And so often they would communicate to me, I don't feel right inside. I still feel empty. I guess I need more national championships. I need more Olympic rings. And it never ends. They're only as good as their last performance. And then we began to dig deeper into really what is it that people are looking for that give them a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that lasts, that's real. And we found out it goes back to this ethical and moral scorecard, your treatment of other people. You cannot fill this with extrinsic achievement. The only thing that fills it is, because I think we're social creatures. For thousands of years, the way in which we survived, we had to connect, tend to, and care for others. Those who were cast outside of the tribe or the unit, went off on their own and just decided to be independent, they didn't survive. Those that survived were the ones who actually took care of each other, were trusted, were trustworthy, had a sense that people bonded together. They were caring, they were loving, they were so often tough-minded, but they were a unit. And when you go in and it's all about you, and you have all these achievements, but you've had to kind of walk over dead bodies to get there, and there's no sense of connection truly to those around you, there's an empty space you can't fill. And so you may be at a disadvantage, Jim, when you say that, well, everybody's cutting corners. Everyone is fudging. If I don't fudge, I can't make it. And I will tell you that's probably true in the short run. But sustained performance, we learned, was clearly connected to your moral and ethical character and how you represented yourself in that space. People will follow you. Your customers will come back. People want to be around someone who represents this because, in a sense, that's how we're engineered. We want to be connected to people we can trust. And so we are drawn to those people, and those businesses tend to, if it's a good, solid business, will last for a very long time. And only when they start cutting corners and they damage their brand, they actually do something to their customer base that is so shocking that their customers start to begin to doubt whether or not this is real. And that's something we have to struggle with every single day of our lives.
Okay, so you bring up also the opportunity for a very important discussion in regards to customer experience, and that is, the demanding customer and yielding to the influential customer, because oftentimes, it's I want what I want, and I'm going to get it whatever it takes, right? So, how does a company essentially draw that line, especially when you start talking about many of those decisions have to be made at the front line, and we have to give them guidance and guide rails and all of that in order for us to be able to find success. So how do we keep from yielding?
Well, again, it's a really great question. And first of all, I would say, everyone is a leader. You're a leader at home. You're a leader at work. You're a leader at your community, in your churches or whatever. You tend to lead. And the whole the greatest importance, I believe, in that space is that you represent that if you want people to follow you in some way, you need to model, you need to be what it is that you want them to represent. So if you want your folks to represent patience and kindness, no matter how bad or how rude this person is that's calling in, or this person that's coming in is demanding everything, what they have to represent is you, and you have to be representative of all of them. So the way you treat your people is the way they're going to treat their customers. And so if you want them to show empathy, kindness, understanding, and patience, then you're going to have to represent that to them. And it starts from the top. You lead with that ethos, and people pick it up. If you are artificial, if you tell people what to do and act very differently, they know it's like, this isn't a real culture. This is all artificial. If I have a bad day, I'm going to have the people who give me a bad day. And that it's a license to kind of be whoever you are in that moment. And you are on stage and people are watching you and your interactions with others, whether it be with a janitor or with a valet attendant, everyone is watching. And you are always leading in some way in the character space.
Okay, so you talk about having character not being something that is static, and that we can build it just like a muscle. So if you can explain that a little bit.
So we learned, and this will probably sound a little crazy to the listeners, but for the viewers, but we learned something at the Institute that is still evolving. And we had a rehabilitation. We had a large 9-acre campus, unbelievable corporate training center, all kinds of things going on at all times. But we found that the more we could understand how to train in this space in a practical way, how do you teach these things? How do parents teach them? And we had this rehabilitation center, and I used to go in and watch these physiotherapists, rehabilitation therapists, rehab a broken arm, a broken leg, someone coming out of surgery. And I used to watch how they would, very carefully, how they would allow stress to be exposed to that area of the body, very carefully, and then allow recovery to occur. And they would progressively stress the system until growth manifested itself, and then gradually increase that until they could put that system under more stress perhaps than it ever was, even prior to the accident or the injury. And we began to realize, and this is the unusual thing, once you learn how to train anything in the body, anything at all, it represents how to train across the spectrum. You can train kindness in the same way you train a bicep. You can train focus in the same way you train a quadricep. You expose it to energy, and these are all muscles of the body, basically. Kindness, compassion, warmth, trustworthiness, integrity. These all can be trained in the same way rehab therapists rehab or train people within their purview with the physical body. So if you want to build a bicep, the first thing you do is you expose it to stress exposure, to stress, and then you allow it to recover. And if you don't stress it beyond its normal limits, it's not going to grow. And so the more you understand it's stress exposure that leads to growth, and recovery is when growth actually takes place. So we can train all of these dynamics, most importantly, these character muscles. And I divide character into performance character, which are all those things that help you to achieve. It's what you achieve, everything like resilience and mental toughness and discipline and time management and on and on and on. These are all things that apply to you, skills that you can possess. And these are muscles. Competitiveness, ambition, motivated, all these things can be taught and nourished in the same way that these ethical and moral character strengths, another category, your treatment of others, can be learned. So all we have to do is identify what it is we want to train. Let's say we want to train gratefulness. You start in the morning and you write down maybe for 3 or 4 minutes all the things you are grateful for, and you try to feel grateful for all those things every day. Let's say you do that for 10 days. You will notice something happens in this capacity you have for being and feeling grateful. And it happened because you stressed it, you put demand on it, you allowed it to recover, and then you came back and did it again. And somehow the system goes, I don't know what's going on out there, but we need more gratefulness.
Well, and what you just hit on right there, I think, is really what all about the personal credo journal. And you talk about creating a robust personal credo and what that's all about. And so as you're talking about that, to me, it often, so I'm a certified pitching coach, and I have been trained in a system that is all about mobility, and stability is actually what creates mechanics.
Yes.
And
biomechanics.
Exactly. Unfortunately, with most pitching coaches, and even how I was brought up, it was all about telling. You're telling person to move this way. That's not the way it works.
Right. It's not how we learn. Generally, that's not how we learn.
It's not. So for me, the whole personal, robust personal credo is unique to you.
Totally. Completely.
Just explain it. It's like, oh, well, if I want to work on gratefulness, this is what I need to do. If I want to work on time management, this is what I need to do. And I think, and in the beginning of the book, it's all about that whole, self, reflection, self-realization, all of those important internal emotional intelligence skills that we have to build muscle in as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So one of the things we found in this credo journal is the result of 10 years of work at the Institute. We piloted this. It was the hardest work I ever did. This was by far the hardest book. I've written 17. There's no book that required this kind of effort than this one does. And I think it's the most important work, but it's something that really requires a lot of heavy lifting for people to see the benefit. And the consequences of doing this are profound. That's all I can say. And you have to kind of experience it yourself. But the whole idea is this: we somehow inherited a moral and ethical operating system. The moral machinery we have, we really didn't have much to do with. Most people we ask, how did you get this? They don't have a clue. It just kind of showed up. This is what they use to make all these decisions about what is wrong. And we make about 8 to 10 moral and ethical decisions, most of which we're not even aware of, but we reference something for deciding, should I do this or not do that? And then we have another system. Once I know what's the right thing to do I actually do it? That's another operating system. So, but we don't own that. It's like it came to us. It was given to us. We might be even leasing it or renting it. This this personal credo work, which is 150 days, is an opportunity for you to build what you believe is the most important, most clearly articulated source code that kind of fills in all the gaps and kind of fixes all the coding errors that are in the one you're now carrying forward. And whatever it is yours. You own it. You've created it out of the fabric of your life, out of what you believe to be the most important values, your sense of purpose. All the things that you believe most ardently in are going to be reflected in that document. And that document is never static. It will evolve until you die because we keep learning, we get more, but at least you'll have something. And we have a system where before you make an ethical and moral decision, you actually filter it through this document so that you can be a lot more certain that whatever you decide, you've actually vetted it carefully and you haven't used someone else's morality system that you really never properly looked at for making some of the most important decisions in your life. And we have a very simple system that once you've gone through this, that, you know, when you have a tough decision to make, the first thing you do is you get all the facts on the table and you look at the facts on both sides. Even though you're motivated to go this way, you spend the time getting the facts on the table. Then you check your heart. What does your heart say here? So that's a different system. You have the analytic system, the factual system. Now we're going to look at what the heart has to say. And the heart may have a very different message. Then you check your gut. Your gut is kind of this intuitive sense. What is the right thing to do? What does my gut tell me? And then once you've put all that information into the hopper and mixed it up and looked at it and bounced it off your credo, then you make a decision. You make a decision that is the best decision you can make, and then you act on it. You actually do what, and that's what integrity is. Moral integrity and courage are very much connected. Do the right thing. And so the more we have a defined system for making these decisions, the more we can rest at night. It may not make it any easier, but we're going to understand that it's probably we have a lot more confidence in the decision that we made and the action that we took to follow up on it.
And if I think about that from a muscle perspective, if you do that, what you're just talking about, and go through that process, you know, with time, you're going to be able to do it faster.
100%. Our goal is to get it to the point where this is almost instantaneous. There are two systems of the body neurologically. That one is, it's called System 1 by Daniel Kahneman, that you're much more pensive. You're thinking about things. We have an intuitive system that's very fast, and then we have another system that's very logical and very, very all the analytic abilities that we have are, and you may come to a very different decision. In fact, our intuitive system is often wrong. We never want to use that as the basis for our making decisions. Occasionally it's right, but a lot of times it's wrong. Well, what we want, sometimes we have to make a decision almost instantly. We'd like to move this moral operating system from something that might take quite a while to something that's pretty quick. And it's actually been processed through this remarkable system that you've created. And it's almost instantaneous, and it's the right thing. When you reflect on it later and you go, that was really the right decision. I can trust myself a lot more now that I will do the right thing.
Well, I think what you're alluding to there in the book, you talk about 3 minds, 2 brains, and 1 body.
Yes.
Okay, elaborate on that a little bit more, because I think you were touching on it quite a bit there.
Well, we're very complicated creatures. Man, it's not simple. And so we have the conscious mind. And that's the mind. That's where we are at this moment. We're fully aware of what's going on in the moment. And that's a small piece of what's going on. Then we have the subconscious mind. And that is something that we're not currently thinking about, but we have access to. We want to call it up, we can. And that's another kind of a smaller slice. It's a little bigger than the conscious mind. But then we have this vast unconscious mind, which is this reservoir of a lot of things that are are beyond our consciousness, and we can't just go get them that easily. They're much more difficult, a lot of stored bad images and experiences, and but it has a lot of influence over how we operate and how we think and how we feel. It's a very intriguing part of how we're designed. If that were all made conscious instantly, we'd all become just overwhelmed with the contents of that. And the more we can bring the contents of that unconscious through the subconscious and up into conscious, deal with it, the less our bodies have to spend energy keeping it all concealed. We use all kinds of defensive measures to keep that stuff from bubbling up because it's just too disruptive. So we have that conscious mind and unconscious and subconscious mind. And then we have two brains. We have this analytical brain, and then we have this intuitive brain. And the two of those are often at loggerheads. They don't always come up with the same conclusion. And we want to, and it's not that we want to exclude the intuitive processor from our decision making. We want to include that data. We also want to include what's going on the rational side. We want to look at all the data, all the facts, verifiable truths, put it all together. And then we also want to look at the heart, this empathy circuit that is so critical to getting it right, because it's a connection to other people. And then we have one body. So we have this physical body. We have this operating system neurologically that's really powerful and has two powerful arms. And then we have this consciousness all the way to unconscious. And those all have to work together. And that's why it's not as easy as we like to think in terms of coming up with the right decision and making sure it's the best we've got to offer, something I would call your best moral self.
Okay, so there's also been a whole lot of insights and study around how we can essentially unite all of those minds, and that we can even influence and impact that subconscious mind that we can't, or the mind that we can't even access, the reactionary one. I mean, and being able to be a master of our mind.
Right.
People have tried to study that. A lot of people have attempted to do that. Going back to even one of the books that's, I think, probably one of the biggest sellers around the world, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, when he's looking at all these mega magnets of money back in the 1900s. So, I mean, is the credo and building this credo and going through these activities and exercises a way for us to unite all of these?
Yes, because it brings all of this together in a magnificent kind of process of learning. We have to keep bringing all this information forward, our insights. What do we want to keep very conscious? How do we make sure that we are on the right kind of channel to make sure that we are holding the line on the most important things that matter to us? So making sure our purpose is right, our connection to others, our values. And that actually helps the entire system get loaded properly. If it's all about you, it gets really messy because you can take advantage of people, you take shortcuts. But if you really establish, and this creative building process is 10 minutes a day with your hand, we actually found that writing it out, and this journal there's a scripted journal that you write 10 minutes a day for 150 days. And within 3 months, you put that together. You actually build your credo, and then you apply it on a regular basis for another, period of time to make it more habituated so that it actually becomes part. It's not something that you read. It's now embedded in this neural processor between your ears. Now this is how you operate. It is your core identity, the core identity of how everything actually is vetted moving forward. And so it's an attempt to integrate the complexities and also to override the unfortunate machinery that we inherited that is flawed, that actually has glitches in it that are easily hijacked, and it gets us into territory. We wake up one day and we say, how in the heck did we get here? This isn't like me. This is not who I really think I am. But here I am. I started out here. I don't know how I got here. Well, that's how you got there. And I'm not saying we're going to make excuses for that, but we're going to take responsibility for every day that we go forward, because we now have a template that will define a scorecard that is our own.
Okay, so gosh, there's so many other things that I want to talk about. We need to keep moving on, and I want to share something that for me was also really impactful, and we'll share it actually on our zip notes to our members. But in the appendix B of the book, you talk about forces and factors that may corrupt your moral reasoning and judgment. And I think for me, these things are like, oh gosh, I didn't think about it. I didn't realize it. And oh yeah, that's correct. And there's 25 of them that you have listed here, but it's things like, for example, the more uncertain and uninformed you are, the more susceptible you are to influence. It's just things that we need to remind ourselves, and they need to, be on the forefront so that we don't get corrupted, right?
It's so interesting. I spent a good bit of my career. I was always interested in brainwashing, because I was really interested, if someone could steal your brain, wash it clean and put something else in there that somebody else wanted. How do they do that? How does brainwashing occur? And I spent a lot of years studying the brainwashing techniques. Ed Hunter identified in his book he called Brainwashing Mao Zedong in China and so forth. And I've studied every single thing that I possibly can. And the whole idea is that our brains are very vulnerable to being stolen. And everyone wants a piece of the real estate between your ears, because they're buying influence. And the more I get, the more influence I have over your behavior. So every television commercial, every car salesman, your mother and your father want influence. Your coach wants influence. Your religious teachers want influence. Everybody wants, and some of them want it in politics, they want it 100%. They want you to buy into whatever that political belief is. And they're all vying to own that real estate so they can have control over your behavior. And I got to thinking, well, what are the things that actually cause you to be much more vulnerable to being indoctrinated in ways you don't really want to be? And those are just 25 of the ones that research has identified actually contribute to your being washed away in the stream of material that you don't even know what's happening. And one of them, the one you mentioned, is the more uncertain you are about your position on things, the more likely it is that someone's going to come in and steal that position for you and fill it with something else. But motivated blindness, if you're motivated by something enough, you kind of you close the door to anything that's oppositional to that, so you don't even look at it. And we're very interested. We have self motivations, and if we hear things enough that support that belief, we're gonna lock it in. We'll never question it. And one day we wake up and we have these powerful beliefs. We have no idea how they were embedded, but now it's who we are, and we find out we've been hoodwinked. The whole thing was a ruse, and it was brought upon us in a very, very secretive, almost seductive way. And so in the military, they have programs. The more aware you are of your vulnerabilities and how people can get to you, the more resistant you can become to being indoctrinated by forces and influences that you want to resist. You can resist if you know what people are doing to you. And so the book actually outlines a lot of that to bring you to a higher level of awareness. I want you to run your ship. If you decide to go that way, I want it's because you decided to do it, and someone didn't steal that real estate because you were simply not awake enough to understand what was happening. And that's happening at levels that is so disturbing. And some of it is entire countries are using those techniques. And even in our political system, there's a lot of those techniques that are being used that I think are really unfortunate. And that's why I would like to see people really work on their own understanding of how to resist and become a force in making sure that whatever in that, who owns that real estate between your ears, you have your stamp on it. It is yours.
Well, I mean, for me, and thank you for sharing all this insight, I see a multitude of ways that this knowing and then therefore doing can
Yes.
impact both employee experience and engagement as well as the customer engagement. And so it's very inspirational. And one of the things that we look at on the show are quotes because they can help us focus. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share that can inspire us?
Well, I guess one that I am most moved by always is Mark Twain. He said the two most important days of your life. Number one is the day you were born. And number two was the day you find out why. And that's understanding your purpose. And once you understand that, all of it will come, and you make sure that you're on a mission to fulfill something extraordinary beyond your own self-interest. And you can have a life, but you're going to have to make it your own. And that's why this credo is so important.
Yeah. And just to be clear, credo, tomato. I mean, we're both saying the same.
They're all the same. It's all the same.
I love that quote. That's very impactful. But there's times where, that doesn't happen. We talk about even finding the way, that we struggle. We talk about getting over the hump. Is there time that you've gotten over the hump that you can share?
Well, in my business, I've had to get over the hump thousands of times. We were told by countless people that this Human Performance Institute was a boondoggle, would never be successful, would never financially make it. It would be a contribution, but we weren't funded by a university. It was funded by people who really felt like it was something that brought value. I was committed to bringing real value or not doing anything. If I couldn't make it, and if Jack Groppel, my partner, if we couldn't do it and make something happen that was real and substantial, we were going to turn it down. And I'm always looking at the data. I'm always looking at, are we having an impact? And so we used a lot of our resources to track people for 90 days and then for up to 18 months to try to make sure that this is not just another fluff ball, that we actually are doing something that has sustainability. So it's a process that I think we all have to be held accountable for what we do. And I don't know how many obstacles that we overcame, but it seemed like almost every week we had an extraordinary challenge in front of us from something. But the thing that I'm most proud of is that we amassed a faculty that I think was almost second to none. People who really understood the world of high performance. Admiral Ray Smith, who was the commander of the SEALs, Commander George Dahm, who commanded the Blue Angels. We had a lot of military people who served in the Air Force, who were fighter pilots, who understood performance under pressure. And then we had a lot of people from the medical world. And when we put all those people together, when you were being tutored, when you're being somehow mentored by someone who's been in those incredible situations, you listen because it cannot be phony. This is the real deal.
Well, now you're doing that work with youth so that hopefully we'll have a little bit less corruption in the world with all.
Yeah, that's my biggest challenge now. That's where my passion is, to try to why wait till we're 50 to figure this all out? Why don't we try to bring this understanding of building your credo and having a source document that you really rely on at as early an age as possible and carrying it through. So that's what we're pioneering now. And it's another great challenge, but we're going to figure it out. It's tough to get to kids today, but the whole idea is really kids mentoring kids. The more kids actually talk to kids about these things, the more they tend to listen. They tend not to listen to adults.
Most definitely. And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Dr. Jim, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Jim Loehr, are you ready to hoedown?
I don't know. I guess so.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I would say the most important thing is to not listen to what people say is possible and not possible, like the Youth Performance Institute. I have to really follow my own instincts. There are a lot of opportunities I have, but that's what I want to do, even though people say you can't do it because the obstacles are so great with parents and everyone else out there. You've got to believe that things are possible, and you got to continue to dig and don't surrender.
And what is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
You know, I really think that one person told me this in business, and that is stay alive. Whatever you do, figure out how to keep the thing alive, and you will figure out how to get it done. Stay alive, keep working, and never forget what your purpose is. And the mission, hopefully, is one that is truly noble.
And what is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
I think awareness. You've got to be aware. And the most important capacity, I think, that leaders have is humility, because humility opens the door to continued and never-ending learning. We've got to learn every day. You got to keep pushing the envelope back and resist what I call hardening of the categories. Once your categories have hardened, just like with your arteries, you are done. There's going to be problems. So keep open to new learning. Never stop exploring new possibilities.
And what would be one book you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre. Of course, we'll put a link to Leading with Character on your show notes page as well.
I would say Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
It's a magnificent publication. I've read it 20 times at least.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to bonus information and this particular episode by going to fastleader.net and putting Jim Loehr in the search bar. Okay, Dr. Jim, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you've been given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you have the opportunity
to what?
You have the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Well, it took me a lifetime to get to where I am. So I would say that character, moral and ethical character above all else. That is the key to everything. It's the key to a fulfilled life. It's the key to a sustained success in anything we do. And it's the highest level of personal health an individual can achieve, and health ignites performance. You do it right, and everything works out.
Dr. Jim, I've had a great time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
So you can reach me on my LinkedIn. My website is jim-loehr, LOEHR.com. And my LinkedIn page, you can just put my name in, and you'll see all the things I'm doing. And hopefully that we created some value here for folks.
Absolutely. Jim Loehr, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and helping the Fast Leader Legion and myself all get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.